going on YouTube? Coming at you on a Sunday. Normally I wouldn't be uploading on a Sunday, but a few reasons. Firstly, I'm watching the post-fight conference from the UFC 217, which was amazing. I checked that out last night. I was watching it, and that was probably the best UFC I've ever watched. All the main cards, all the title fights were just sick. I couldn't like, I was speechless watching it. Like, this is just amazing. So there's a few reasons why I'm coming at you on this Sunday. So that's the first one, that fight. I want to quickly just discuss it and give you my analysis of it from a different perspective, because there's a lot of fight analysis, but I'm going to give you an interesting take on it, because I like to dissect things a little bit differently sometimes, just for thought experiments, just for fun, really. Probably puts him to sleep. So I'm going to talk about the fight, and next, it's November 5th, so remember, happy 5th of November. And if you know what that means, you know what that means. So happy 5th. I felt a little bit compelled to upload this video because it's the 5th of November. But anyways, let me get at the fight. So what's really cool about this fight, what I thought was really interesting, it actually landed at the time of November's full moon. So the full moon, if you're into astrology, and I'll put some links in the description below. I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not super into astrology. I study a lot of other different things, like a lot of religious texts and you know, various different religious or Vedas, if you want to call them that. It depends on the culture, I guess. But no, I study a lot of that different stuff, and I study a lot of science. Various types of science and a lot of different metaphysical stuff. So I'm not too into astrology at the moment. You know, I've briefly touched on it, dabbed in it, but nothing crazy. But I do know a little bit. So what's really cool is that this fight landed on the full moon for November. So what the full moon signifies, it's landing in Taurus, the sign of Taurus, if you're again into astrology. Check out the link in the description below. I'll include some info on this. But now this signifies a time of death, decay, rebirth, change. Now it happens at the time of like fall or autumn, when a lot of the leaves are dying from the summer, everything's sort of coming, and we're getting into the winter seasons, the long nights. Now a lot of this ties in with shamanism as well, and I've spoken of shamanism in some recent videos, which you know, I'll link in the description below. But what's really cool is this fight landed on that. So the fact that there was 3 title fights and 3 belts, new belts, and all of them, essentially, you could say that they're all underdogs coming in. The challengers in these 3 title fights. That's debatable with the GSP one, if you think he's not an underdog. But watching Rose here, she was an underdog. But what's really cool about this, I watched a lot of the stuff leading up to the fight. What's really cool about this is that leading up, the other chick was talking a lot of trash to her. You know, the champion. She was talking a lot of trash to her, a lot of smack. Actually, I was watching one of the weigh-ins or something like that, and she was saying, "You've never fought like someone like me." The champion was saying this to Rose. "You've never fought someone like me. I'm gonna steal your soul." I thought that was pretty intense, and Rose just kind of standing there straight-faced, and actually she was reciting the Lord's Prayer. So she's kind of just holding it together. And she has a really cool mantra that goes something like, calm, composed, I'm a champion. And she just recites that mantra. So that's freaking amazing that she's doing this, in my opinion anyways. That's what makes a champion. So, what's also really cool about Rose here, I don't know if that's kind of ironic, but she looks exactly like, with her shaved head like that, she looks exactly like the actor from V for Vendetta. Going back to the 5th of November thing, which I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this video. But anyway, so this lands on a full moon, this fight. The fights happen, 3 fights, 3 sort of upsets in a way, and 3 new belts are issued to the challengers in these fights. Really cool. What's neat about her fight there, she was the first main event. So the women's fight was the first main event. So that was sort of to kick things off. Now, what's interesting, if you look into astrology and the moon phases and how this was a full moon, it sort of ties in with this divine feminine energy, which a lot of metaphysical stuff talks about. Oh, my TV just turned off. So it ties in with that stuff. So the fact that the first fight was the female fight, I thought it was kind of interesting, and that it was to kick off or signify something. And now, why does this matter? Because it's UFC. So how does this matter on a world scale? Because what was the biggest thing that most people, in, like, you know, not most people, but what were people watching over this weekend? Millions of people had their eyes on this event. Millions of people didn't have their eyes on anything else to the extent they did this particular event. So the whole world is watching, and it kicks off with the female fight. And you have one fighter saying, oh, I'm going to steal your soul. You haven't fought someone like me. She's 14-0. She hasn't lost. She's a crazy fighter. And she's fighting this relatively new Rose Namajunas, I think her name is. The challenger, the one with the shaved head. Who's staying composed, who's reciting the Lord's Prayer, who has mantra, and who gets into the fight and takes out the champion in the first round at the 3-minute and 30-second mark, which happens to be the name of Rose Namajunas' gym. So she even mentions in her post-fight interview, that's why I'm mentioning this now, because she said it in her post-fight interview that this was a coincidence. You could also call this synchronicity if you're into using that type of word. That word can be a little bit triggersome, if you want to call it. So that was really cool. So the whole world's watching, and she creates this, she performs and creates both of them. All the fighters, all they're doing is performing. Now I'm into a lot of stuff, but I'm gonna reference Jordan Peterson here, who's a professor, Dr. Jordan Peterson, a professor at University of Toronto, a lecturer. Actually not too far from me here in Toronto. Now he gets really into sort of the mythological hero, and I've mentioned it in some other vlogs of mine, and the mythology of the whole thing. I think that Rose here is expressing this mythological hero to some degree, you know, in this fight. And I've killed off a bunch of audiobooks recently on physics, and one of them was actually really good. It discussed multiverse, different level multiverse, a 4-level multiverse, and this book was by Max Tegmark, and it's an amazing book. I'll put the link in the description below. I'll probably bring another audiobook series coming up, but this book was really great. Now it sort of explores that there are all realms of possibility of what can happen, and that essentially, and this, I'm going to tie this in with Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson has some stuff in his biblical series where he discusses the meaning of life. Now, I personally think the meaning of life is to put on that performance, to have that creative event that the world is looking at. So this is to actually go through the process of creating this drama unfolding. So this is essentially the stage. The UFC 217 is the stage for the drama, and it's just really cool to see how it all unfolds in the terms of aligning with astrology and aligning with this idea of the mythological hero. Now the physics side of it is that I see all the different realms of possibility based on the decisions of the actors involved in the drama, in the play. So you have Rose here. So based on her decisions, this determines the outcome. And her decisions were in accordance with and aligned with a certain outcome. If you're talking about a multiverse, multiple, infinite, you know, possibilities, she ropes to a certain outcome and almost pulls it towards herself through her actions, through what she chooses to do leading up to the fight, through how she chooses to compose herself, through her mantra, which actually involves the word compose. So she pulls this thing to her and aligns it with, I don't know if she knows about aligning with astrology and the moon phases, but you know, this is in essence how this drama unfolds. So in the infinite realm of possibilities, that's what happens. Now the second fight was also an upset with Cody Garbrandt fighting TJ Dillashaw, and that was an amazing fight as well. TJ just took him out. And now we're going to the third fight. GSP ends up taking Bisping. Now what's really cool about the second and third fight, And if you look at all 3 fights across the board, and if you look at the decisions of each of those fighters involved, if you look at Dillashaw, he was composed pre-fight. He was not really talking too much trash. He was just kind of smiling and just waiting for the moment. If you look at GSP, he's composed, smiling, waiting for the moment, not talking too much trash. If you look at the champions on the other side, what they're representing across all 3 main fight cards, they're not representing this composed mythological hero that each of these challengers are representing. What these other champions are representing is chaos. They are representing the dragon. If I'm going to tie this back with Jordan Peterson, they're representing the dragon that these mythological challengers are set up to slay. If they maintain their composure, if they follow the necessary steps and make the necessary choices in order to pull and align themselves with the outcome in which they I assume, visualize and perceive in advance of the fight, in advance of the drama, the play which unfolds. So this is all really cool, how I sort of have picked this apart. And what's really neat for me is that when I was watching the fight, it felt really interesting to watch, in essence, because my mind is constantly spinning with different thought processes and things like that. So, you know, to watch it, it was beautiful. It was like watching a painter paint a perfect masterpiece. And then I went to sleep and I woke up and I was still thinking about the fight, which never happens to me. I was thinking about the fights. And of course it's November 5th and I thought, well, you know, remember, that's kind of cool. You know, I'm gonna hop on maybe and talk about that briefly. But you know, I thought I'm gonna dissect the fights in this video from a metaphysical, religious, gibbledy-gobbledy, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it woo-woo. But you know what? All it is perspective, which there's no harm in delving deeper into that perspective, breaking it apart. Because that's a lot of what our ancestors did in terms of just telling stories, creating the mythologies. That's why we have a lot of the religious texts we do. That's why we have spirituality and metaphysics stuff, and, you know. But then we obviously have these UFC fights, these events, which at the end of the fight, when Joe Rogan goes to Rose Namajunas, she basically says, like Christ, she says, like Buddha, she says, I'm just a normal, average person. I'm just doing my thing. And all we should do here is see this unfoldment, this drama, this play as entertainment. And everyone should hug each other and love. That's her message, the first fight. To set off the 3 change new belts, the rebirths, which took place. So that is the analysis that I want to give you guys. Is a little bit different than a lot of the other fight breakdowns people will give. And that's because I like to come at things from a different perspective sometimes. And yeah, that's basically it. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up, share it with some people. Let's talk more about this stuff. Comment down below. If you're familiar with any of these things, check out the links in the description below. And thank you for watching. I'll catch you again in that next one. Peace.